Yeah. So you said before we get into motivation, so I have to ask, are you recording right now?
Yes.
God
I
damn
realized.
it, I did it again! Damn it!
Like a volcano.
Hello, everybody. We're back.
Greetings, beautiful people.
All these beautiful... I don't even know what I'm saying right now.
The words
We're
just
back.
apparate right out of your mouth, and it's wonderful and glorious, so don't question it. Just make it happen.
Just apparate the word. No, they usually apparate on my fingertips. I think I've become a better writer than public speaker, which is awfully impressive. I used to be a pretty good public speaker, but oh well. We're back.
I'm still a better writer.
What'd you say?
I said, I'm still a better writer than I am a speaker, but that's mostly because I can organize the chaos that comes out of my brain.
I suppose that's kind of the problem with like the neurodivergent, like how we're both like pretty neurodivergent, is that we're both much better at actually writing things to each other than we are talking to each other. Maybe this should just become a text-to-speech podcast. It might be more coherent that way.
Well, that would run into its own set of things, because I'm pretty sure the text-to-speech program would have a wonderful time dealing with my dyslexia, so...
Oh, no. All right, so we are back. We're going to talk about give a second part to making characters, and that is inspiration for your narrative characters. The first episode for this hasn't come out yet. I have yet to download it. The last thing I'm going to do after we stop recording is I'm going to download it and try to get it uploaded. I might tell Josh to do it. In fact, I'm just going to tell Josh to do it. Is there a way you can... Yeah, I'm gonna message Josh and ask him to do that.
I suppose by the time that this is actually published, the other one hopefully will have been published. But at the time of this recording, we haven't put out the first part yet. But we had such a good time with the first part being incoherent and loopy at late night that we felt like we needed to continue that conversation into a little bit more areas before we do the great follow-on of the mistakes.
It really is attests to the skill of our editor. So, shout out to Keyframe. He turned an absolute disaster of a recording session into a fairly coherent episode. Well done. The man, I guess, has now, I don't know, what's the equivalent to this? Restored. It's like he's restoring an antique or something, and he's just made it beautiful comparatively. So, wow.
Well, he finds the diamond in the rough.
Yes, he does.
There you go.
But before we get into characters, we have two announcements. And that is that we have two narrative events we want to plug first. There are two, one of these is in person, and one of these is over Discord. They're both happening pretty close together, so I'm going to talk about the first one right now, which is at Everwinter Con in Boston. It's happening December 9th and 10th. There's a 2-day narrative Warcry event being run by Nuno, who, if you're kind of into narrative Warhammer already, you probably know who Nuno is. He runs a fair amount of events, and he helps run any event that he's not running. He's either there, or he's, like, providing some support to that event somehow. He's a really cool guy.
I was going to say he's part of the Narrative Event Organizer Network, and perhaps best renowned for the Filthy Casuals podcast that he had with a gentleman named Bossian, who used to be a huge, well, I shouldn't say used to be, still is kind of a big name in the early AOS narrative scene. He ran some of the original Nova events. Part of, and I shout him out simply because what they did with things such as, what did they call it? Convergence? Oh, Coalescence, excuse me. Convergence. Convergence would be an awesome name for an event campaign as well, in case anybody out there wants it. I'm claiming that real quick. But Coalescence campaigns, they were part of some of the original people who got now current members of our Animosity team interested in delving back into it. So in a very indirect and wonderful way, they helped bring Animosity back. So it's only fair that, we shout them out and say, hey, whatever they're doing now, still keep doing it. But the Andor campaign does look particularly cool, and I actually have some news about that event.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh, you're talking about the Animosity one, not the Andor one.
I'm talking about the Andor one. I'm going.
Oh. You are now, are you?
Yes, I managed to find a way.
Well, I'm going as well, actually.
That's why I figured
So
it would be a fun surprise.
I am now very, very excited for this. We can talk. We're definitely gonna have to talk about this stuff because I'm gonna be in the area anyway. Funny enough, my boss at work found out about the event because I casually mentioned I was voluntold I have to go to Boston. Because the way Nuno approached me was literally, "Hey, we're doing a narrative event. By the way, here's your ticket." And I'm like, "Well, okay, I guess I'm going." So I told her I got voluntold to go to Boston. She said, "Oh, what are you doing there?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm playing Warhammer." She's like, "What's Warhammer?" So I told her, I'm like, basically I paint fantasy orcs and we play games with them. And she's like, "That sounds awesome. You have to go." And I'm like, "Well, okay, boss, let's work with my schedule here so I can go." And she did. She's totally great. I love my
cool
boss.
thing
She's
is,
easily...
yeah. You gotta love it when
cool
people
things,
actually support your hobby. So, no, but I'm saying I managed is the minor miracle that occurred is I'm actually going to be coming up with Chug Lords. So, Baltimore boys showing up.
Oh, okay. No, I thought you meant like you're playing Chug Lords, and I'm like,
No. Actual
okay.
Chug Lords.
Actual Chug Lords. Oh my goodness. We're gonna have to find
is rolling
pictures
up
of this
too.
now.
So the Great Chug and the Able Auburn Baking Company will be showing up in force for the Warcry event.
Well, shoot, maybe you need a third for a hotel room. If so, I'm in. But no, that's really awesome. I'm gonna be there as well. But the gist of the Andor supply event is it's a 2-day Warcry event. To kind of give a, I mean, we'll post the event pack, of course, but I'll give like a brief rundown. It's we're using the Warcry 2nd edition rules. There are no divine blessings, but there are some upgrades for your custom fighter because this event requires a custom fighter of either an Andoran. They're called Andoran experts. So you either have to have... The idea is like we're kind of hunting endless spells is the gist in the middle of the Everwinter. So there's the Andoran Spellsmith or the Spell Hunter. So you're either trying to use these primal endless spells or you're trying to capture them. Is the kind of the gist. But the reason why you should totally play this is you bring a maximum of 1,300 points with you. Standard narrative rules apply. So one hero... you have to have a minimum of 3 fighters, no thralls or monsters, and your hero starts with a renown and heroic trait. You can bring experienced warbands. So if you have a warband that you like playing from another campaign that you ran with your buddies or something, and they have upgrades, you can actually bring that here with their upgrades, which I think is super cool because that gives a lot of narrative continuity to whatever you're doing, and I think that's really awesome. It's a cool thing Nuno's... I don't know if Nuno has always done this, but I think he's trying it. The other thing that's really cool is you can optionally bring a warship display board, which is roughly 10 feet by 3 feet in size, but can be no more than 16 feet by 8 feet. Inches, sorry.
I was about to say,
Inches.
The scale on that is an actual boat, not a display board.
Hang on.
Are we playing Titanicus? What?
We're playing Titanicus. Surprise, Titanicus. But the thing is, there's just one little paragraph here. It's optional. You don't have to bring one. But this will act as, quote, this will act as a display board and as a movable terrain piece to be used as part of the final mega battle at sea. So you should definitely bring one. There's all sorts of cool treachery cards and stuff, custom treachery cards that are being used and stuff. That's like the elevator pitch for the event. We'll post the event pack in the video description, but you should definitely come and play to this, especially if you're looking to try narrative events. I know con tickets and con events can be expensive. This really isn't. I think there was like $50 combined for the event ticket and the con ticket. And obviously, if you go to the con, you can get all sorts of other cool stuff. So this is definitely like on the cheaper end, and it's also easily accessible because you just need Warcry. The way that it works is your battles start at 1,000 points and increase automatically by 50 or 100 points after every battle to a maximum of 1,300 points. And at most, 15 models from your roster may be brought into each battle as usual. But this is super approachable. And that's what I really love about this. So if you've been looking to give it a try, it's a weekend in Boston. It's December 9th and 10th. It's definitely well worth going, and Nuno has been talking about trying to get people together to try like different pastries and wines from his homeland, apparently, which is really cool. So definitely get involved. It's on the Great Weave Discord as well. That's kind of where all the people are talking about it. So you're gonna want to join the Great Weave. We'll share that Discord as well. We've talked about them before. They're cool guys. Yep. So yeah, do you have anything else to add about that one?
I kind of like to think of the Great Weave as kind of like the Great Library of Alexandria for narrative stuff. So always worth checking them out.
It is. Yeah, it really is. It's definitely worth checking them out. The other event, which I think Kai is probably going to better be able to promote than I am, is the Animosity Weekender is happening in January. Oh, Weekender, air quotes. It's a 10-day event. But I'm going to let Kai talk about that one, because I think he's going to remember all the details for that one better than I will.
Indeed. So there's two components to it. It's called Animosity Weekender 2024 Rolling Thunder. Our Weekender events are kind of like in between our major campaigns. We call them Weekenders because they originally started off as lasting over a weekend, and we realized that, how we do things kind of involves a little bit more time necessary on it. So we do it now as an extension over 2 weekends. There will be a in-person component to this campaign that's going to be happening at LVO through one of our wonderful event organizers, Naro, not to be confused with Nuno, but Naro. So if you're going to be attending the LVO, the great one, if you will, there will be an AOS and a Warcry narrative event that's going to be part of this campaign. That's the in-person part. And then the rest of it is going to be in our typical Discord online format over the same period of time. So if you're going to LVO and attending LVO, sign up for that Rolling Thunder event. You will get to participate in the in-person component, which will have its own unique part of the campaign to play out. 5 narrative paths. One of the paths will only be resolved during that in-person component of the event. The other 4 will be part of our broader online open to everybody as long as you have an internet connection event. In this particular campaign, and this is kind of near and dear to our hearts because we're coming up on 20 years of Animosity. From when the original Animosity 1 occurred in the closed orc not Discord, but the old orc forum, the WA. The original founder's name was Mogrek Longblade. And after the events of the Fated Blade, Mogrek Longblade is returning now, stronger, more powerful than ever, and is marching upon the Prime Dominion of our lore's sake. So our Weekender is an attempt by forces of the Prime Dominion on a kind of vanguard spearhead style to interdict Mogrek Longblade and his great Wa. So we get to resolve and see what happens and if we can divert, or I guess I shouldn't say divert, that's a bad way of putting it, but seeing if we can delay Mogrek Longblade enough for the defenses of the Prime Dominion to fully actualize. So there will be implications for Animosity 6 coming down the pike that only will be resolved now in our Weekender heading into it. So, Shattered Dominion Animosity 6, you can help influence the fate by playing in our Weekender event in January.
It should also be mentioned that unlike Antdoor, the Animosity Weekender, extremely long weekend, extended Weekender Director's Cut, does not require the in-person component. If you're going to LVO, you get access to one unique path that you can report in, and that's only resolved that way. But otherwise, this is a really good way to see if Animosity is right for you. And it also gives you some continuity, because if you decide that you want to stick around, well, come next summer, that Animosity 6 is going to be about this conflict. So, the second part of this conflict. So it gives you some nice continuity there. It's a good way to kind of dip your toes into the narrative side of things and really learn about what our community is about and what Animosity is like and what narrative gaming is like. So if you can't make it to Boston, I really recommend this one. We'll share the link to the Animosity Discord. There's a lot of hype around this one because it's returning to a setting that we explored previously that a lot of people really liked. Probably, I'm going to go out on a limb and say probably the biggest of the new Animosities was this one. It's definitely the one with the most stories. I'll put it that way. I think that's a good way to describe it. So, returning players there's a lot of returning players who are super excited for this and are definitely going to be able to help new players with this. If you're afraid about getting into a returning setting, don't worry. I just realized I'm spiking my microphone again. Don't worry.
We provide full background materials and information on every part of what you need when we do the event campaign packs for these events, as well as being able to answer any lore questions. Plus, if you're in our Animosity Discord, you will have access to people who played in those campaigns who are more than willing to answer any questions you might have, particularly as you try to build warbands or characters or understand. And the third and final thing is you can still access every unfolding narrative, all the background material that was produced for Animosity 3, the Prime Dominion, not the Fated Blade. But we keep archives of most of our... what's the way I want to put this? Anything that's been officially published either as prelude to the campaign, lead up to the campaign itself, or anything such as our unfolding narratives about what happened as the campaign itself unfolded is always going to be accessible and archived in our animositycampaigns.com website. When you go to the bottom of any of the pages, there will be a series of Roman numerals 1 through 5 now, with the Fated Blade concluding, and you can access all the previous campaigns and their information there.
Yeah. I think there's two factions to this one. So Antdoor Supplies, I'm pretty sure free for all. This one has two factions. I don't know if we actually really specified that you're getting sorted into, that there's teams here that you sign up for. You're either for Mogric Long.
I was going to say, the Weekenders are always what I like to call campaign light. So not as, it's very simple rule sets. We really parse it down just to make it more fun and more quick over the weekend. You're probably not going to ever have more than 2 factions, or as opposed to the 6 you get in the major campaigns. And the narrative paths are, you pick a path to report to, and then you submit as many type of reports through the course of the week as you want to it. So you can do, I think there's a hard cap on the number of total reports, but there is no requirement that they have to be different types of reports. So if you just want to write like 4 or 5 stories, just write 4 or 5 stories. If you just want to play 4 or 5 games, play 4 or 5 games. So we really take the cap off of this one just to make it more fun.
Yeah. As I recall, I think this one has shifted the formula a little bit, where each player will be able to submit up to 3 reports to one narrative path of their choice.
Yep.
So you are locked into the one path that you pick, but obviously.
So choose where you defend or attack wisely.
Exactly. But otherwise, like, and that's like a slight like variation on what we normally do, but I think it's a cool one. It's not an unwelcome shift for a weekender. So those are our two events. Obviously, if you join and you have questions, you can DM me anytime. I'm Ayli on the Discord. I'm pretty hard to miss. So,
And of course, you can DM or use any of the Ask the Team threads or anybody who's green, so your GM teams and your moderators in the Animosity server Discord.
yeah, for sure. But how do I make a character for this event, Kai?
Well, you go back to our previous podcast and you get the full introduction on doing that here. But I think for us now, it's continuing the conversation of how you make your character. And I honestly think, maybe we should have led off with what inspires you to make a character in the first place.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of different options there, I think. I think I just want to get cracking into it already, though, because I'm all primed up. I'm all wound up and ready to go.
Well, we've been talking about events that we want to go play in and are having fun with, but I had a thought and then it escaped into the back of my brain and it stalled me there for a half second. So the fuel mixture was a little too rich there for half a second, but
oh no.
I was going to say, it's like inspiration, I feel like, is a continuous thing through a character's development. So you have the initial inspiration that gives you the initial idea for what you want to make as a character. And then you have additional inspirations that come in through the life or the journey of that character that make you want to take it either in a new direction or as I like to say, is like you're testing and challenging your character with a new situation every single time to see how they react and evolve. And those kinds of inspirations and moments and motivations I really feel like are what really drives why you want to have a character rather than just almost like a history book of lore for your force. Because a lot of narrative I see out there is, and I'm throwing a very, very broad net when it comes to Warhammer 40K in general, is, people who make like custom armies and custom forces, custom Space Marine chapters, custom seps if you play Tau, Chaos Legion war bands kinds of things. Like, you have these ideas and they just kind of sit there as kind of like a history without an awful lot of individual development and I really feel like when you have characters, you can inspire that war band to go and do things. You can inspire that army to go and have and win new battle glories. And I feel like, especially with our wonderful introduction talking about new narrative events coming up, these can serve as inspirations to help further drive your character development as well. Like, what inspires you to want to go and play in this event can also be a reason why your character wants to go and fight in these events, or if there's a particular thing you're trying to accomplish. Like, I'm very curious to see, particularly with the Andor supply. I mean, a Caradron force getting to show up with a boat, playing a Warcry event about capturing these endless spells. Like, this is a very intriguing prospect for why is Theodra there and why is she trying to grab things? Or even if I bring Theodra, maybe this is a new person that's going to form part of the greater core of the Able Armored Baking Company. So the inspiration and opportunity there to try a new thing and to kind of explore a new avenue for an existing force, or to put an old character in a new situation.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what I'm doing. I mean, I'm bringing Vaethan for both of these events, is what I've kind of settled on. It seems like a good part of this, why I'm doing that, though, is to make myself hobby with the army to get those models done.
Yeah, this is definitely motivation for me to finish a bunch of Arcanauts that I haven't previously built.
Yeah, I mean, my girlfriend's talking about the same thing. She's like, okay, now I gotta get stuff done. So that'll
Nothing
be really
like a
fun to see what
deadline
she
to
comes up
focus the
with.
mind.
Exactly. Not that I've hobbied in the past week, but that's what my girlfriend and I were about to do when you said, hey, you want to record? So, I'll take it. I had a thought there, and and I lost it. Oh well.
Well, let me ask the question. Let me ask you this question, because I'm always curious about it in that wonderful way of mine. But it's, where do you draw the most inspiration from when you get into a mind space of wanting to make a character?
This is gonna be hopefully not too lengthy of an answer. Where do I draw inspiration most from? It's typically from... okay. There's art. Art plays a role, a heavy role in that. And then usually when I'm looking for a character, I'm just kind of scrolling through art. Be it ArtStation or Twitter or anything else like that. Usually Twitter, because there's just so many crazy artists on Twitter. And it's really easy to get lost in that rabbit hole and start delving. Sometimes it hits me kind of unexpectedly. I think I've talked about this before, but the inspiration for the Thinkers and for the Wa Mother was actually the League of Legends card game. So Legends of Runeterra. And I guess I'll find some art to share of that. The Avarosans were a huge inspiration, especially their voice lines for those cards was really what I wanted. And obviously this is why it's not too hard to see now. Wa Mother, War Mother. I mean, especially Art of Sejuani played a role in that, but also Ash helped play a role there. A lot of times it's things that the characters will say, like little one-off quips that they say about themselves that are very insightful, down to the way they say it, or, the words they use are all very insightful. Working in a hospital, and especially being like a patient, somebody who does patient care for a living, there's all these little bits of insight into people and their lives or their mindset by the smallest things, how they talk, or how, the way they talk about a certain topic, or their attitude towards being in the hospital, all these little things. So generally speaking, my insight is, or my inspiration is largely those little things. Sometimes it's trying to make... honestly, it's been a while since I've made a character. I think the last time I did was the last Animosity Weekender, which was a year ago. I made a different character. But I mean, the Ethan I made years ago, and Korra was kind of just handed to me. So it was already kind of there. So it's kind of weird to think about it now. But I think about what that character... I think actually, unironically, their backstory and where they're from plays a role. Where is this person from is a good start for me. Usually that's where it comes from, is I want to make a character who's comes from this place, or is coming out of this, so they grew up in this kind of social situation, or, be it cultural or like sociological, etc., be it like a family situation or cultural level. That was kind of a spew of words there. Let me try to organize that a bit better. They're coming from someplace, and it's either on a social level or a cultural level. And obviously these things kind of are obviously intertwined a lot. But that's where I start, and then I think about, well, what's that like? What are things that you might say, or what are your attitudes going to be if you're coming from that place? And then I go from there, and that's usually when I try to find art that really captures that character. And then I always, of course, because I'm a good person, I always write down who made the art piece and where I can find more of their stuff. So later on, I know where I can find more art pieces like that. And also, it's good to remember, if you're going to use art for your own personal reasons, I like to remember who made it in case somebody asks. But that's really where I start. So there's that four-field anthropologist mind at play there, where really, I guess the short of it is, making characters is an anthropological exercise for me.
That's interesting and cool.
I said a lot of words there.
No, you did, and they were good words, and that made sense. And it makes me feel kind of like a more basic bitch now. with how I do things, but that's part of the, I think part of the reason why it's fascinating to get your thoughts on things versus some of mine, because you've always approached character building and character making from a very different perspective in a very different place, and yet we seem to both arrive at kind of the same point on the journey a lot of times. Now, I will say that it was very enjoyable to watch you make Korra. And I feel like part of that particular exercise was you took inspiration from what I had done with Kai. And like, I feel like you wanted to know more about this random, green ghost that was appearing every time your main character was taking a bath. And, and I started sharing. It is still hilarious to me in so many different ways, considering that, I feel like he played an Uno reverse card with the Lady of the Lake. But,
oh.
So, which is honestly, it's its own minor inspiration of, like, in the back of my mind, I was the joke thought of what happens if Kai is the guy who constantly appears out of the lake to this girl. And, it kind of spawned from there, is especially considering that I kind of felt like he was in more of a mentorship and inspirational role in the very beginning with Viethan. But
he definitely was, but one of the things I want to point out is that started, like, this little bit of, all of their conversations happened to happen while she's bathing, started well after I had kept poking your brain about Kai.
yeah.
I had kind of, I think I made this joke on episode 1, but you started talking and then about it, and then you stopped. And I was the person that showed up on your door the next day and be like, hey, can you tell me more?
Yeah.
Very much the secondhand Lions thing. If you've ever seen that movie, which is why I said, it's one of my favorite movies, even if it has some representation of Middle Eastern people that has not aged well at all. Although we could argue maybe it's trying to be super campy on purpose because it's a bunch of old guys telling the story. But it definitely has some things in there that aren't great, and then other things that are pretty great. But and I'll leave it at that. But when people talk about that movie, or when I recommend that movie, the thing I tell them is it's about modern day knights, because it reminds me of Sir Kai in a lot of ways, and me in Sir Kai, and honestly, like the kind of dynamic you and I have. It reminds me a lot of that. Obviously I went for... So obviously, if you're making a character with a friend... So here's the practical side of this. Is if, there's a friend who's a much more experienced narrative gamer going to you with this event, and you don't know where to start. Tying your character to your friend's character somehow is a good start. That is something that you can do, and that can be your inspiration as well. Who would be going with this person? I don't know, do they have a squire? Or a friend? Or an advisor? Or a student? My number one advice in Animosity was always be a student of Kai. Much to his dismay.
I'm not sure much to my dismay as much to my shock. It's just like I don't want to sit here and say it's like I have some sort of strange pretender syndrome when it comes to some of what I've done, but it's more of the pleasant and unmitigated surprise of being reaffirmed that, yes, for all of this time that I've developed and made these stories, that there are people out there who really want to digest them and really want to enjoy them. And then want to, in many ways, kind of continue the legacy that I kind of built for myself. And I never imagined that people... I guess this is going to sound strange, but it's outside of what I've done with Animosity, and I know I've said this before as well, or at least in a different context, but outside Animosity, I really don't put my work out there. Like, to me, in many ways, what I do and the stories that I write, they're always... I'm not sure if I want to say I hold them back deliberately, or it's like I never feel like they're good enough. Or I feel like the audience for this kind of thing, like the audience for Sir Kai for a very long time in my mind was me, myself, and I. Like, I didn't really feel like people needed to be involved in the process with me. Like, I would write the stories and I'd post them for the animosity campaigns in order to meet the requirements for submitting a battle report. And it's always kind of a surprise to me that people latched onto it in the way they did. Like, I remember at one point in one of the old campaigns, there was a person who made a short list of his favorite characters to read. You know, the people who posted stories, and I was like number 2 on that list. And I was like gobsmacked and shocked. I'm like, damn, people read? Not that people read, but people read my stories. So it's kind of always like this pleasant surprise, because I always feel like, oh, I could have written that better. Oh, it could have been more awesome. Or like what I did with the collaborations with Vera for a long time when I was developing the, you know, kind of my Kai has a romantic relationship thing was, you know, these were stories I was just sharing with her, and we were kind of collab writing. It wasn't because I wanted to, you know, put that out in the broader universe to gain fame, infamy, and glory. It just so happened to be that they were really good stories that a lot of people really liked reading, and I had a lot of fun writing. Like, my enjoyment for the longest time is being able to create something I can go back and read and say, yeah, that was pretty cool. And then realizing that, you know, people like you really wanted to read them too, like, and that can explain also why, you know, Alex and some of my other old animosity friends have always kind of kicked me in the ass and say, hey, put that story out there. You know, we have a narrative thread for a reason.
Exactly. I mean, and I had a similar thing where I don't get why people read my stories so much, where I've had people say, I'm all like, let's say like, I always want to read your story when you put it out there. And it's funny because I'm not just writing things to meet the requirement. I mean, I'm trying to write something good. You know, I want my work to be good. Yeah. But it boggles my mind that when I said, yeah, I've got a couple stories here, and everybody's like, when I posted my epilogue to Animosity 5, I had multiple people say, I was waiting for you to post your epilogue because I really wanted to read it. And that's why, you know, when I said, you know, I don't think I wrote anything that special, people said, are you kidding me? We were sitting around waiting for you to. And I'm like, what? But going back to this idea of maybe inspiring your character by a buddy's character, obviously I wanted to know more about Kai because he's her fucking dad. And he really takes after her a bit, because that was the initial pitch of the character, was that, you know, they have knight daughters and wizard sons. There's another element of this that I'm going to talk about, and, you know, kind of going to the anthropological sense, you know, the role that storytelling plays and the role that, you know, your culture or the people around you play in your life and that you need. In many ways, I unironically look up to Sir Kai, and I guess by extension you, and obviously you say, well, I'm not that tall, but bullshit. I mean, I've seen tall. You're towering over me.
I'm 6'3", so
yeah, there's this. And I talk about this actually in the foreword that I'm writing for my book for National Novel Writing Month next month, which is about Korra. I talk about this in the foreword, where that foreword serves two purposes. The first one is to obviously, you know, talk about how, hey, if you're a Warhammer Fantasy player, there's things here that don't line up. Here's why that doesn't line up with the lore that you know. And the second one is talking about the hobby and the relationship with the two father figures in my life, my father and you, whether you like it or not. Unfortunately, you've kind of become like a second father figure to me. And we can say that's unhealthy, but I say we don't always get a choice in that.
I say I do my best to help all people. And what comes of that mentorship and support, you know, yeah. But it's still an inspiration.
It is. No, I mean, it very much is.
And the fun thing I will say is, like, you know, one of the things I've never really gotten to explore with Kai is, you know, I don't necessarily want to call it the fruits of his relationship and his love life with Dao Ming and, you know, by extension, the family that he created, but it's just like, Kai's always been the knight, and that's the space I've explored, what it took to win the life that he ultimately wanted to have, like being able to settle down and start a family and live and actually have and find a piece of land where he can have a little peace. And the exploration of, okay, interacting with his daughter now, like Kai the father is a very fascinating person because it's a very different place than Kai the knight and warrior,
Exactly. And that's really good inspiration as a character who is now being thrust into a new situation that they don't know how to handle. I mean, I did a similar thing with Vaethan and Hitomi. Vaethan doesn't know the first thing about being in love. But she's like, well, I'm here now. What the fuck do I do?
The other thing for me...
I think that's a really good inspiration for a character for the Weekender, is somebody who this is their first time in war. It's like, yeah, you've done all your training, but are you ready for war? Or are you not from the Prime Dominion and you're just in this situation for some reason, and now you have to make the most of it? I guess on some level what I'm getting at, tying this all together, is the background for your army, is good. And if you're lacking characterization, the way you get that is how do your soldiers or whatever respond to the current situation based on their past? How does their past experience inform their actions and attitudes now? How does that challenge them? How does that make them grow? It sounds like, you have to have all this stuff ready to go to actually have a character, but you really don't. If you have a backstory and an idea and how would this person behave, that's enough. The rest of the characterization comes from outside forces and you having to respond with the tools that you gave yourself.
Or the tools that you found. Like, the point I like making here is, you have a beginning that you can take in any direction that you want to. And it's these inspirations that give you points of light on the horizon to chase. And I feel that's vitally important to be moving in a direction with your character rather than just letting them stagnate and be unidimensional. And it's okay to go through a period where you're not inspired. Like, you're not sure where to go. You're not sure what you're doing. And that itself can be an interesting moment to explore. But you should be striving and kind of pushing yourself to, put your character in new positions just to see what happens. And to kind of touchstone back to the dynamic of, you being inspired by me. And this is something I would say to people who have been in kind of my position. And this is kind of a bigger thing of, part of our hobby and Warhammer in general is you're always being introduced to new players. And this is really me talking about being an older gamer, an older person. I don't want to call myself old, but I am. God help me.
Age is an attitude.
Well, I'd say is one of the greatest quotes I ever saw was on the entrance to the park in Winchester, Virginia, Jim Barnett Park. And it's this sign on your way out that says you don't stop playing because you grow old. You grow old because you stop playing.
That's a better way to put it, because every time I try to describe it, like, age is just a number.
Yeah. But
I get some different interpretations of that I'm like, no.
But when I sit here in as an older gentleman, older gamer, looking at a new generation coming into the game, like, there is a sense of responsibility and a sense of joy to relive your own early experience through helping them or helping anyone coming in to play. And I know a lot of people talk about this as, there's this kind of stewardship and the important thing of mentoring and developing new players. And I think that goes not just for, people in terms of, here, let me help you learn the rules. Let me help you learn, let me help you get your first model kits together. Hey, I've got like these 3 spare, like, I know that, people who have helped me along the way, I kind of take inspiration from them in helping new players along the way. So when I saw somebody who was very much interested in developing their narrative thing, like, I felt kind of a strange kinship of, okay, I've been there, done that. Let me show you how I learned how to narratively wargame and why it's so fun to me. And then getting to relive kind of, and especially now as a father, you know, my tiny human is at daycare right now, so he's not going to interrupt in that thing. But it's this whole thing of like, I'm there in an experience where I get to pass on my knowledge, some experience, and then watch people take the same joy in playing, in exploring their characters, and trying new things. And I think that's in a lot of ways, you know, the fun that I have now in my position with Animosity is, you know, while I'm a moderator, like the major component that we've built into that job is mentorship. And so I take it very seriously when new players are coming in to try to help them enjoy and explore what they can do in narrative campaigning, in narrative play, and in kind of as a general scope of, you know, yes, we are predominantly focused around a system that is a tabletop war game, but this is an excellent vehicle to tell story. And this is how you further expand that creativity. As I like to say, is like, if your battle has a reason to be fought over, it's going to be more impactful and meaningful too.
Exactly.
You know, so, and that comes back to why narratively war game. But, you know, for me, it's like, if you've been there, done that, have a couple of the t-shirts, you know, like, I feel like there's an obligation in many ways to help the next generation come up and find their footing as well, if for no other reason than to ensure the health and continuation of a facet of the game that I love.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's funny that you talk about like this mentorship idea with like your kid or with other gamers, because that is another part of, you know, your real life, is that you are either a mentor or you have mentors, or, you know, almost always people are both, right? But I think the thing that helps me make characters that feel real is by remembering that even though these characters are fictional, by nature of the fiction, there is a reality for them. And they also then, within the fiction, have a real lived experience. And that's part of why I come back to like anthropology, or like, you know, talking about psychology and being an anthropologist and an archaeologist and stuff, and a linguist, even being a sociolinguist as well. I guess I should just start calling myself a four-field anthropologist. My archaeology supervisor in Belize told me that to my face. She's like, you do realize you're a four-field anthropologist, right? And there's not a lot of people that can truthfully say that. Between medical and linguistics on archaeology, I guess I meet those requirements. But, you know, culture is also built by the lived experience of people. Well, those people are all individuals. So on a case study level, you know, you can just have one person's lived experience and let that say a lot. And then you can have, you know, that person's lived experience in context of the group, and that says a lot too. You know, we see this, you know, my experience with this is being somebody who's been out of the closet transgender for, oh God, what, 2019? So what, 4 years now? 4 years, and I've done and tried a lot of different things. And then I see people who are fresh out of the closet, and it's, you know, having to be, I mean, there's a distinct lack of these, but having to be the trans elder, because I've been doing this for a while, and I've come to terms with a lot of things about life and myself through that experience. But also, you know, here's another talking point here, is the context that being 24 and deemed an elder says a lot.
I'm sorry,
only 4 years experience.
I shouldn't.
No,
laugh
I mean,
at
no,
that.
but I mean, absolutely, you should laugh because it's funny. But, you know, the point I'm getting at here is we've used all of our real life experiences in these characters. And I know that some people say like, oh, don't, you know, make your character yourself. And I say, okay, like, don't do that. But also you have lived experience, and so you're a person and you're playing a sentient, sapient thing, which means it also has experience, and you know what having lived experience is like. So you better use that.
I would say, and this is the elder in me coming out for a quick second, because you say you're 24 and now I'm sitting here at 42, so I'm the perfect reverse. But you know, it's when you talk about injecting yourself into the character, the thing I say is don't like beam down your complete whole self into a single vessel and play it.
Exactly.
You know, you need to take parts of yourself to put into the characters so you have a point of connection and a touchstone to that character that you understand. If you have a character you don't understand, you're going to find it very difficult to play. But if you understand at least the one part of that character to explore, that's important. You know, like you need to have a connection to the character, but it should not be your whole complete being. The other one that I look at, and this kind of may touch down into something more seriously, is, you know, we tend to inject parts of ourselves that we want to explore further, either in terms of, is it good, is it bad, kind of indulge in a little bit of, I don't want to quite call it self-help or therapy, but it's like trying to inject something into the character so you can see it as kind of a mirror of yourself to evaluate yourself. I feel that's a common thing people like. Yeah, common thing people like to do, but I'm not sure is ultimately good. At least not from the standpoint of character development. Now, I say all of that and then I flip around and say any artistic endeavor in some way I feel like is devoted in the pursuit of people trying to understand things about themselves they don't like.
I'm going to say understand themselves in general, not necessarily things they don't like.
Yeah, but art has this capacity to take our traumas and turn them into something beautiful.
Yeah.
You know, you look at a Van Gogh and you see like the screaming face, and it's just like you can't help but I always say that art is our emotional history.
It is.
You know, as opposed to like the written record, which is our actual history. But art is always like a history of expression of how we felt in moments. And there's something very evocative in that. And that's, I think, why we gravitate so hard to art when we talk about where we get inspiration, because it makes us feel a certain kind of way and want to explore feeling a certain kind of way. Like you use visual art. Honestly, most of my characters come from music.
Music plays a role for me too, but only after the fact.
Yeah. Like, I will say the Abel Auburn Baking Company is directly the result of Tennessee Ernie Williams? No, not Tennessee Ernie Williams. What is his?
What's that?
Tennessee Ernie Ford and 16 Tons is that particular song.
I'm going to have to give that a listen to now.
One of the most Caradron songs ever, I would say, but it's talking about, I sold my soul to the company store. 16 tons, and what do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. How Caradron, right?
I think you would really enjoy the Chemical Workers song as another good one for that. And that's one that I would base my Caradron off of, is definitely that one. But
Sir Kai is a direct result of Last of the Mohicans. That opening jig.
I think... Oh, God, if I had to pick a song for Vaethan, it's probably either... I think it's Smell of the Game by Daisuke Ishiwatari, but it might also be What Do You Fight For, which is also by Daisuke Ishiwatari. Because Guilty Gear is really a kick-ass metal album with a free fighting game attached to it. But I think talking about this emotional thing is really also doing with, how much effort do you put into your character? Obviously we put a lot of effort to our characters, but we've talked about, somebody before, Chug Lords, maybe doesn't do quite that, but his character is still awesome. So you can also base your character around like the experience that you want to have. And I think your inspiration there is looking at, a good way to do it is to look at pieces of media or even mythology. God knows I promote mythology as a great source for characters, because mythology is crazy and wacky, and there's so many different ones to look at. Greeks, the Nords, etc. Or the Norse, sorry, not the Nords, that's Skyrim. Anyway, so, you can look at pieces of fiction or media and be like, oh, that's a cool place to start at, and go from there. And if that's what you want to do, more power to you. I mean, I guess I shouldn't...
our mythology...
I shouldn't air quotes mention Chug Lords there for that one, so maybe we cut that. But there are people who do
Chug,
that.
I think... Well, when Chug and I go up on the slow train to Boston, I'll be able to pick his mind about where he draws his inspiration, so I can report back. Like, I would say this is like things that appear simple oftentimes aren't.
That's fair.
I try to make very simple characters and then infuse them with an awful lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I take that very seriously. I mean, Styx on a branch of Tree Clan, in his own way, is the most absurd thing I've probably ever done. However, like, there's still some seriousness underneath that belies the entire thing. But
for sure. But part of that character is also the experience that you wanted to have. So I would say, if you want to have the experience of being the underdog, well, then find underdogs. If you want to make people laugh, if you're like me with Socrates or Chungus with Chungus, make people laugh.
I'm not sure
play
what Chungus is trying to do, but Chungus does it extraordinarily well, because I'm not sure if he's...
I should really change my advice to become a student of Kai and also Chungus.
I mean, the joy with Chungus is the fact that it's a serious commentary on life that you never would expect to be serious until you actually sit down and think about it.
Well, that's the thing too, is like even like the joke character is a commentary on life. It really is. Because I mean that's what comedy is. It's comedy. It's commentary on your life.
I just say specifically in general, talking about Chungus, it's this is an inspirational character that I think a lot of people just the level of profound that comes from some of the insanity that he does, and it's beautiful and poetic. And it's just like, I feel like there should be like a 20-page dissertation on why Chungus is amazing at some point, even though like he says 3 things like, no, I'm gonna pet Stab Cat now.
Stab Cat.
But,
what a great name for a stonehorn.
But it's this thing where we talk about finding that character and then finding what that character does, and then letting that character grow and develop, and let them eat. Just enjoying letting them eat on the scenery, eat in the narrative interactions they have with other people, and then just seeing what comes out on the other side.
Yeah,
and
no, keep going.
I was going to say, and where you find those inspirations to take you on the next part of that journey, whether that's a song, whether that's a piece of art, whether that's the interactions that we have, whether that's, I feel like you can compel yourself to follow like the hero's journey or these grand story arcs that we see as part of and there's a reason why they are the tropes in our storytelling, in our own mythologies. But at the same token, it's just like, don't be beholden to that you have to go on this like grand arc or journey. Maybe your guy is just wandering in a circle lost.
Exactly. And that was going to be my thing is, I talk about these big picture ideas from, my academic experience and my real life experience. And, I don't want you to, I don't want you, the listener, to think, oh, you have to be thinking about these big picture ideas all the time. No, I'm not your, awful English high school teacher. Okay. I'm, I just because I'm lost in thought about those things and about life and psychology and, even the hero's journey is a thing I've had to reckon a lot with in, like Norse mythology, because I've been reading a lot of that lately, or I should say I'm reading it under the guise of the Stoics and even a little bit of Jungian psychology. Shout out to Between Two Ravens. They're a really cool podcast. If I don't quite always agree with their takeaways or their readings of things, but they're super cool nonetheless.
It
doesn't mean you have to
have a different point of view.
Yeah, I mean, doesn't mean you have to be. Or here, I'll put this in a way, because this is something that my girlfriend has mentioned before in the art space, is you don't have to be highly educated to do that. You don't have to be highly educated to make a good character. You don't have to be thinking about all these big picture ideas all the time and stuff like that. No, you don't. Just sit down and have a good time.
You just need to have a willingness to explore.
Exactly.
And I always, I've probably said that. Like, I feel like it's a drinking game at this particular point now. It's just like, I've always thought about, okay, take a drink. I've always thought about when I do these things, like, is my character worried about the next day? And this was something that was very intriguing when I looked at the differences between when I made my Caradron character and Sir Kai. Like, Theodor Brecht von Alburn is a businesswoman with a long-term strategic mindset. She's looking at not just tomorrow, the next day, the next week, the next year. You know, she has an entire corporation to run, so she takes a very long-term strategic view on things. So Sir Kai was the exact opposite. He didn't think about tomorrow when there was a battle to fight today. Like, he was very much in the moment this needed to be done. And that kind of informs, like, the different arcs and journeys that they both have gone on. You know, I kind of feel like Sir Kai basically was constantly surrounded by a fog of war, and it was whatever the most important thing in the moment was. And that fog really didn't lift until he had reasons to look beyond. Like, I think the difference between the knight Sir Kai and the dad Sir Kai is that Kai now is looking at the fact that there is a future that is much longer than just surviving till tomorrow. And it's okay to have your character only look at day-to-day stuff. Be in the moment. Be present in that moment. You don't have to have a huge arc. And it's okay also to have a character who's constantly thinking about the long term as well. You know, those are two different mind spaces and two very different inspiration points that can inform you. Like, if your character's trying to survive because they need to make quarterly profits in the next 4 years, or their entire apparatus of their corporate machine that they've built will come apart. Very different than a knight saying, I just need to make it across this field and hit my lance as hard as possible into the chest of the nearest Chaos Warrior.
Yeah. Exactly, right? And I think I actually kind of want to touch on also the notion of, like, struggling with creativity as well. Because I used to be somebody that was completely like that. And on some level, I feel like I still am, until I found a way to make it work. So what I'll say is, if you struggle with creativity, you know, you've never done anything like this before, you don't care for it, you don't care for reading books, or, you know, maybe it's just like, look, I watch the occasional Netflix show, and why the hell would I ever go to an art museum, whatever, doesn't matter. Start with something, you know, a piece of media, or just something that you like. Maybe it speaks to you. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe you just think it's cool. And use that, you can use that as your base to make a character. You know, maybe that's where they come from. Maybe you create a character in that setting and be like, okay, now I can just transfer this to Age of Sigmar because it's super easy. You know, obviously I want our advice to be applicable to all different kinds of narrative play, ranging from, you know, Age of Sigmar, or maybe even the occasional Kings of War event, because there's more narrative Kings of War events happening, finally. Or maybe you're doing a historical campaign for, I don't know, Flames of War or Band of Brothers, and you want to... Is it called Band of Brothers? There's a big historical game, World War II historical game. I don't remember.
Bolt Action?
Bolt Action, that's it, sorry. But they do have a Band of Brothers box set. I think that's where I'm getting confused.
Yeah.
But you need, and you need to make a sergeant, or, you know, a major, or something like that. I want all of this advice to apply to you. You know, so that's why I'm talking about all these different ways. So, you know, if you really liked The Dragon Prince on Netflix, you know, you can be like, well, you know, Aunt Maya would be pretty cool. Well, then take Aunt Maya and tweak her just a little bit. You know, maybe she's still a deaf general that leads from the front and she's completely kick-ass, but you put your own couple little spins on it. There you go. Now be in the moment and be willing to explore. There's no...
My advice going into this is, when you're trying to habitate in a creative space, go and enjoy other people's creativity.
Yeah.
And allow yourself to be drawn into I don't. I want to say be drawn into the emotion of the moment and the art that you're seeing, and it's not necessarily, you know, that you need to feel the same things the artist felt, but allow yourself to feel something as you're enjoying that art, whether that's music, whether that's, you know, walking around an art museum, whether that's going down to the library and just randomly pulling books off of shelves and just reading a line. Like, one of my favorite exercises, and this is going to sound very strange and very weird, but this also came out of when I was doing some of the Ren Fair stuff, is I would go into like a fiction section of the library or even a historical section of the library. And I would say, okay, for the next hour, I'm just going to read page 62 of every book I find. Just to see what it says.
Now I want to do
that. And it was silly things like this. You know, silly little challenges. Now, part of it was like my student job at Ohio State was working in the library, so I had a lot of time to do this. Or like, you know, because one of my duties, and this is kind of where that fun idea came from, is I'd be given a little roll cart of books, and it was my job to put them back on the shelf. And that involved riding up and down an awful lot of the elevator. So as I'm riding up and down, you know, God help it, I think they recently renovated the library at Ohio State, so it's a little bit better than it was, but the slowest possible elevator in existence, which both a blessing and a curse depending on how much in a hurry you were. But it was a very smooth elevator, and from an engineering perspective, I really enjoyed the fact that you could barely tell you were moving until you stopped. And the only reason you knew you were stopped is because somebody would probably clear their throat to tell you to get the hell out of their way. But part and parcel for that particular thing. But I found myself with a cart full of books, and I would do something that's like, oh, I have 42 books to put away during my shift. Page 42 it is. And I would just see. And, you know, when I find myself with a little bit of spare time, I do that. So, and then music is another great one, you know, like random playlists that you find, you know, Spotify playlists of random people, you know, like you find a song you like, you see what other kind of like playlists they're built into, and you just kind of go on a journey. And even if you're not yourself feeling particularly creative or inspired one day, you know, listening or reading or looking at different things that are the ultimate expression of somebody else's creativity sometimes can help you just get back into that mindset, or just give you a spark that you need to reignite your own. You know, let it be a kind of a catalyst for you. But as I'm fond of saying, your muse is a fickle bitch, and there's no sense in trying to force it if it's not there. But surrounding yourself and letting yourself embrace, and like, one of the things I found in writing is that I enjoy reading a lot more because of it. Seeing what other people do with their creativity, seeing what other people do with their own inspirations. Like, I've always been a fan of seeing, like, this is the one thing I really miss about my creative writing classes in college, was we'd all be given the same prompt and then see where everybody else took it.
Yeah, this is a thing that my little brother is a creative writing major right now in college, and that's something that he talks about a lot, is how everybody is constantly baffled by the direction that he takes the prompts. But everybody also loves it, mostly because it never fails. He always seems to turn every prompt into a comedy piece. So, you know, all this crazy stuff that people read, and they're like, I was not expecting to read this today, but I loved it. You know, the professor says that too, where it's like, I've taught this class for 8 years and nobody's tried to do that before, and this is hilarious. But I mean, even like at its most basic level for like this getting into the creative mood, I mean, my father, least creative man I know. You know, the only way that he is creative is to find the solution to a unique problem because he is a plumber and an electrician. That is the most creative he gets. And he was talking about...
Mad engineering respect.
Yeah, exactly. And he was talking about, I was talking about something something about magic, and Warhammer that I was writing, and he said that he liked this bit in, I think it was The Many Deaths of the Black Company. It was one of the Black Company. It had to be the Black Company series, and that series always stuck out in my mind because I saw one of the book covers and I went, "Oh, Raymond Swanland did the art for that," and he said, "What?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's Raymond Swanland." And I went and opened the book, and I opened up, and it turns out it was Raymond Swanland, because he was a very popular Magic the Gathering artist, and his style is very particular. So I just kind of identified it from across the room. But he had mentioned that the way Magic works in that setting is not like, people casting fireballs. It's actually very limited. It's very small things. So like the wizards of that, of this particular army, like, as the armies are charging each other, the wizard casts like a swarm of bees into like the center regiment. So, how far can you really walk when you've got about 20 bees stinging the crap out of you? And the regiment breaks ranks completely. And it just turns into a slaughter, and it collapses the entire army because their center rank collapsed. And then he casually mentioned offhand, if I was doing the kind of things you were doing, I would write about that. Wait, what? There it is. If you can definitely ask yourself the question, if I was going to do this, how would I do it? So if you're very like task oriented or problem solving, you're much more grounded, I'll say, than like so to speak, asking, making it into a task or a problem to solve is actually a good way to go about it.
This is why I have so much fun building my miniatures and being inspired by why I'm putting the bits and bobs on them that I am. I will shout this out pretty hard as, mad respect for my fellow, engineering types, your mechanical and your builders. We are underappreciated as a creative group of people because our creativity tends to be very much in a practical bent.
Exactly. And I mean, and that's a big struggle I had with the hobby. Getting into it was I was very practical at first, and now I'm not. But sorry, I cut you off there.
But what I was saying is, what we find creative is going to be different. We're not making in the same veins. Like, I honestly feel like most of my creativity that goes into the physical expression of my hobby, which is my models, is about the posing and the building and, how I am able to try to individualize each one. I do like posing my Tau crisis suits in what I like to call actual physical poses, in the sense of physics works this way, therefore. I'm not going to defy the laws of physics as I'm putting this particular crisis suit together. I mean, we have to follow the laws of physics, otherwise your crisis suit will never stay on its base. But, there is an element, I feel, in my own creativity that goes into that physical manifestation that I have a lot of fun with. And I feel like I am more creative in a traditional sense than many other my fellow engineers, but that's not to underscore that, you get a plumber talking about a perfect flow rate through 3/4 inch into a 1 inch pipe, and you'll find out that they're creative, but they just brain on a different brain wavelength. Like, this is the constant fun I have with my own wife, because she's a very abstract creative person, and she's called me a very physical and concrete creative person in ways that, I'm not, like I said, I always feel like you learn about yourself through your interactions with other people better. But, some of the things, it's just like, so my favorite story involving in this particular one is she wanted a desk, and there was an IKEA store in the place we were living. I singularly looked at the IKEA options and the price range we wanted to do and says, these are useless. I hate particle board. It's not going to last long. There's going to be cats jumping on this desk. This thing's going to bow and break apart in the span of about 6 months. It is not a practical engineering solution for the problem. So I'm going to take that $200 and go to a Home Depot. And I'm going to get an equivalent amount of wood, and I will design and build this thing myself. And She comes home after I've made my trek journey through this entire thing, and she says, I sent you to get a desk and you brought a pile of wood home. And I said, yes, that's going to be your desk. And she goes, like, you could watch her brain kind of break. And like, and the only thing that kind of was holding her back from yelling at me was the fact that she has love and trust in what I do. But she was extraordinarily skeptical, is the polite way I will say this. And then in the course of the next afternoon, I made a design, and with the great trifecta of tools which every human being on their earth needs to own, which is a saw, a palm sander, and a drill, I was able to create a desk. And it was an extraordinarily good, solid desk, 2x4s and 1/2-inch actual plank wood, and it's a desk that lasted 6 years. And the only reason why we had to get rid of it is it no longer fit into the new apartment, so we had to disassemble it and recycle it down into other components through the house. But she looks at me and she goes, I don't know how you turn that pile of wood into a desk. It's like magic. And I said, wood is magic. And it was just like, it was in that moment I think she kind of realized, the creativity vein that kind of goes through being able to take component parts and turning them into something is a vital and necessary creativity. So don't, all this is to say is, to all my tradesmen out there, you do you. Don't ever let anyone call you uncreative, because you're some of the most creative motherfuckers on this planet. You just do it differently, and you make the earth run for it.
Sorry, Dad. The most creative I've ever seen him be is, how do I get this task done the most efficiently? One of these, here's another fun story on that note, where I was doing a tiling job with him, and we locked ourselves out of the customer's house. And the only window that's unlocked is the bathroom window, because we needed to vent for air. So we get a 2x4, and he drives as close to their garage as we can. And I put the 2x4 on the roof, and I climb on top of the van, use the 2x4 as a bridge. This is, by the way, about 3 inches thick. No, way more than that. Probably 6 inches of just straight ice on this roof. As I have to slowly, both of us, shimmy my way over onto the side. Here's the other thing. The roof stops just short of the window. So now my dad runs over to the other side of the garage and is there to catch me in case I slip and fall, as I have to lean over, grab onto the open windowsill, and, like, basically Assassin's Creed myself into this house. On the second floor. So if anybody saw us out their window, they're going to call the cops because we look like we're breaking in. And then my father, in his infinite wisdom, goes, "Oh, I found the key! I'll be right back!" And he, leaves his spot of catching me if I fall, to go and open the door and open the house and pull me through. And I'm like, creative problem solving, almost broke my pelvis probably, but this is the most creative my dad gets, is how the hell do I fix this problem I just created? Oh God.
I mean, he had great inspiration and motivation to do that level of creative problem solving. So
yes, he did.
This is when I talk about putting yourself in crazy situations just to see what you would do.
But that's really good inspiration for a character, though. Is this goofy thing that happened to you, or this little individual moment?
Yeah.
Vaethan and Hitomi did not start out as, not necessarily commentary on my relationship with my partner, but definitely started as, things that I want to see in my own relationship. And it's funny because now there's these little moments that happen with my partner and I that I have to write about. Or, we have similar things that happen where, my girlfriend stares at me and goes, "What the fuck are you doing right now?" And I'm like, "Just trust me, okay?" And she goes, No, you're being ridiculous. And then, of course, it turns out I'm being ridiculous and it doesn't work. So, the opposite of the good fortune you had with your wife in that situation. I had...
Are you trying to say that my wife hasn't looked at me and been right when I'm doing something dumb?
I'm trying to say
Allow
you're
me to
far
put it to
better
you
at
this
it than
way.
I am.
There is a second brain able to process all the information that you may be neglecting because you're so focused on something else. Like, being with a good partner is not a linear increase in brain capacity, it's exponential. So
Yes.
you are always stronger together than apart in certain ways. Like, I understand that I have a very unique relationship with my wife, and that as the years go on, what I feel like is the most natural and simple thing in the world has turned out to be extraordinarily and unfortunately uncommonly rare. But it's still that whole thing of, there is a certain amount of trust that goes into loving someone, and you have to trust them when they say you're being a complete lunatic. Stop. Like, there's at least enough love and respect that needs to happen in that moment to say, maybe I am being completely ridiculous and need to stop. Unless you know you're not being ridiculous and need to stop. And be like, no, you need to trust me. This insane thing we're doing needs to work.
Oh, we've had our fair share of those
Stories
as
for
well.
another time.
It's just like, trust me. But again, I mean, those are things that can start out as a character inspiration, oddly enough, is that situation where you have to trust somebody else, or it's just something completely silly that happened in your life, and be like, well, what happens if I put this fictional character in that circumstance? Boom, characterization.
Yeah.
Right then and there. There are so many tools in your day-to-day life. There's just so many things in your day-to-day life that you have to make a character. So what I'll say is, obviously, if you're in this hobby, you're probably a little creative, but even if, painting it, if you don't feel that creative, the way you paint is you prime the color, and then you do, like, take a different spray can and prime, like, 2 feet away from it on the top of those models to get your highlight, and then you just put a wash over it. There's your 3 colors. Cool. You can make a character. If that is the solution that you have to the problem of not wanting to paint or not feeling like you're creative enough to paint, then you are 1,000% creative enough to make a character. Trust me.
Some paint on a model is better than no paint at all.
And if some character is better than
as
no
an
character.
Yep. Like I said, the most important first step you can ever do when you make a character is give them a name.
Yeah. Give them a name.
The moment you give them a name, they are a person. And then it goes from there.
As anybody who has a toddler who's adopted a random cat before, and now you have a cat, if it has a name, you're fucked.
Yep. But it's also, what I would say is, you never ever have to be in a rush.
Yeah.
To fully form out a character. As a matter of fact, I would honestly say it's better not to have a fully formed out character. That way you can discover new things about them constantly.
Yeah.
And this kind of goes back to my, start simple, go big. But they have a name, they have a purpose. You start with those 2 things, and then you let it eat from there. The inspiration and the motivation in their moments start to appear as you encounter them. You listen, my favorite thing is I'd be in the midst of trying to write a character, and a song would come on that would make me feel a certain kind of way and have an emotional connection to that music. And then that would become the emotional vibe that I would take into what the character was doing in the moment.
Yeah.
And this is, or you would see a picture. Like, I'm always been a big fan. If I couldn't write, I'd go take a walk and just look around me.
Yeah, that's a big one.
I've
do
been
as well.
blessed in, just, letting something happen. Now, that's kind of strange sometimes in Baltimore, because that leads to some very interesting situations. But at the same token, interesting is good. Because, you encounter things that you never would yourself imagine to begin with, and then you have the fun of processing it. But, motivation's going to come out of the strangest places. You're going to be inspired by even the most simple and mundane things, as well as the most extraordinary and cool things. So never deny yourself an opportunity to experience something new, and never deny your character the opportunity to encounter or experience something new as well.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it's those moments where you truly take inspiration and turn it into creativity. You turn it into a story. You turn it into something important that then happens for your character to grow, develop, and continue on their journey. And by not trying to put them in those experiences and situations, it's kind of denying yourself that moment.
Yeah. Actually, I think on the whole, maybe that's a thing we're trying to say is making a character is on some level philosophical. And that's okay. To what degree you embrace that, you're always going to come out with something good. Because if you made it, it's good. Let me say that again. If you made it, it's good. It's good enough for any narrative campaign. To what degree that character needs a characterization is, are you playing Animosity? Okay, you probably need a lot. Are you playing in Antdor? The Antdor supply run? Probably don't need that much. But you can still have that. Or is it for your own purposes? Going back to last episode, if we're talking about what Saul does, what Kurgan does, those characters get a lot of characterization just for his own fun. Doesn't mean they have to if you choose to do the same thing.
And it's like, you make this character for yourself, and other people get to enjoy it too. But ultimately, it's what makes you happy, and what makes you feel creative, and what makes you have that thing. Because I hit on this pretty darn hard with myself when I look in my own mirror, which is most of what I've done with my characters is for me.
Yeah.
And other people just happen to enjoy it. And 90% of what I've written has never seen the light of day. But it's in my nice little book over there in the closet. Or I should say the nice little laptop, since, everything's I've written mostly on the computers and such. But it's those rare moments where I do feel compelled to share. Other people have taken joy, but it's also a level of vulnerability for me, because it's just like, I always feel like it's not good enough, or it's not cool enough, or nobody's really going to like it. But for me, I took such fun joy in doing it that I would not ever stop. And when you go to narrative events, I think one of the beautiful things about it is you get to be surrounded by positivity and creativity too. So if you participate in an Animosity campaign, if you go and do something like Anders Supply, LVO, Nova, where you get to be around people who have the same kind of passion for what we do as yourself, you get to be inspired to continue the journey, because you realize how much everybody enjoys it, how much people want to know about what you're doing and how you do it, and then getting able to then play with, like I've always said, creativity begets creativity. And one of the reasons why Animosity holds such a special place in my heart, and why I've done it now for as long as, I have, is because I know every year, Animosity time, I'm going to be surrounded by amazing creative people who are going to inspire me to keep doing this hobby that I love so much. And while it completely ruins my life for 6 weeks, because I basically devote my entire soul, mind, and body to this endeavor, like, those 6 weeks every year have been kind of like the most important thing I've done. And I don't necessarily say that lightly, because it's like it's the time that I feel my most creative. It's the time that I get inspired to accomplish the most things. And I have so much fun. I can't wait for it to come around next year.
Oh, yeah.
And it's about either being that I get to create something really cool, or 9 times out of 10, it's watching what everyone else creates in the same space with me.
Yeah.
And as an inspiration, like, if I didn't have Animosity, I probably would have given up Warhammer completely after the first 4 years.
I would have as well. In
I
fact, I would have
probably-
given up after the first 2.
Yeah, I would have started in 97 and been done by 2001. And I wouldn't have had anything that would draw me back. But it was always the people that I got to interact with and having these little fun narrative moments. When I came for Nemesis Crown and then realized, hey, I can keep doing this. I can keep being inspired. I can participate in these campaigns, and it gives me a reason to want to play. It gives me a reason to want to keep these little plastic miniatures on the shelves. It gives me a reason to take out the massive dry brush and dust the brush off.
Yeah.
This is where it comes down to for me. And if I didn't have that, I wouldn't be doing this. And I'd just be I'd almost say I'd be denying myself something that has enriched my life in a way and allowed me an outlet for creativity I never would have had. And it's really allowed me to free exercise that artistic side of my soul that really desperately wants to have a reason to exist and to enjoy itself. And, I'll leave this thought off with a moment where my father, speaking of fathers, shout out to my dad, he recently came and visited me here in Baltimore. And this was preceded a couple months prior to it by me sharing a picture of one of because he always loves asking me, hey, what are you working on? What are you doing? And, for the most part, we talk about, how my car's running, because he's a very mechanical guy. So he's always interested, he's somebody that's helped me build computers because he was very big into that in the very, very beginning of the computer age. So we always like talking shop and hardware and doing engineering kind of stuff. And I happened to mention to him offhand one time, I was like, hey, I'm actually building a model. And he goes, oh, what kind of model are you building? And so I sent him a picture of the Tau Crisis suit I was building at the time. And he got really excited. And he sent me a picture of a model he had built in the 80s. It was one of the Dune crawlers.
Yeah.
Or like one of these over Dune vehicles. It was like this crazy little tricycle that had like these acorn looking wheels. And then we spent like the next 30 minutes just completely geeking out over what is your crisis suit, dude? What is it about? And, I got to tell him well, deep strikes in, and it's this weapons platform, and it's highly mobile. And, my dad being a military man talking about my wargaming stuff, but the first thing he did when he came to the apartment is he immediately went over to my area where I do all my work at, my little workshop area, as I call it, my corner. He just sits at my desk. He turns the chair around. He looks around it and he goes, this is awesome. And he wanted to see every single miniature I'd ever made and built. And he was geeking out at this so very hard. And he looks at me at the end of this particular visit. And of course, the next day is spent completely he's got a grandson. So, Grandpa and my son got to have grandpa time, but he spent really that first evening when he got in here with me going through this thing, and he looks at me and he says, I'm so proud of you. And I go, well, I've always known you're proud of me, Dad. And he goes, no, you don't understand. He's like, and then he starts showing me art that he's made through the ages. And he says, I'm so glad one of my children has got the same creative art bug that I do. Because all my brothers and sisters, God bless them, have gotten the mechanical side in spades. They're very practical people. But he was just like, I'm so glad one of my children has gotten that artistic bug. And it was this connection that I had with my father that I really, really treasure and love. But it was just that idea of I couldn't believe that for as long as I've been alive, that we shared this same kind of passion. Now I've got him. He may have actually bought some AdMech.
Oh no.
Because his passion had always been Mars. And going to Mars, so my father is in the Air Force, retired now, But the reason why he went into the Air Force is he wanted desperately to be an astronaut, and he wanted to be a geologist because he wanted to go to the different celestial bodies and collect the rocks and figure out the great mysteries of the universe. So that was his goal, is that he went to school for geology and business administration.
Oh, he's definitely
on
your
an
father.
ROTC Air Force scholarship, and he ended up not quite making it. He fell in love with air search and rescue and flying helicopters. And the great joy that I actually have in this, he says, I didn't get to go into outer space. He says, but what I did do is I got to fly he was actually part of the Air Force unit that was on standby for the beginning of the shuttle missions. So if something had happened where the shuttle had to abort, he would have been the Air Force guy that went out and saved him. So in his way, he got to participate in the shuttle and the space program. But his big love with space is that he always wanted to go and explore Mars.
Yeah.
And so Mars holds a very special place in his heart. So when I got to talk to him about the cult of Mars and the cult mechanicum, where it's this they wear the red robes because they camouflage on Mars, and like all the biological enhancements they do to their bodies so they can exist on the surface without all these special suits. Like, he loved it. And so I bought him one of the AdMech starter boxes that had it was the old starter box, so it had like the Dune Crawler and the
Oh, that's the
Skitaar.
best box,
And-
though, because like if he decides to play, the Dune Crawler's so good.
Yep. But he loved everything that was going on with it. So, but it was just having that connection to him and like watching him get inspired by. But I guess the long part of that is to kind of say, like, we all have a creativity desire within us, whether we realize it or not. And then being able to be inspired to let that out, let it eat, get to enjoy it. Like, narrative lets you do that in a way I think few other things can, because you have an artistic component, you have a physical construction component, and you have the entire narrative in terms of the written lore, the idea of the character, the philosophy going into a mindset. You have this ability to really explore all these different facets of a character and creating a complete thing that you can then put on a tabletop and play. And what motivates and inspires you into that can be any number of things. And it's just about going out there and experiencing it, and then going out there and then letting your own character experience its own moments in that same way.
Yeah. No, and I think to kind of tie that together, talking about those different components, it takes a truly incredible person to be a hobbyist. But if you're listening to this, you're probably a hobbyist. So if making a character is really daunting, obviously you don't have to invest as much in narrative play as we do. I mean, for us, that's like the only way we play. But for most people, that's not actually the case. But
No.
But
it's very easy to start.
It is. I think that's the big thing, is it's easy to start. And your start is good enough, even if you don't think it's a good character. If you don't think you're a good writer or whatever, spoiler alert, you are. Because any writing is, for the most part, good writing, for our purposes. Is what I'll say, because I know there's somebody out there who's definitely read their own share of bad books, and what I'll say to that is, well, we're not publishing books. We're writing this for ourselves, which means it's good enough.
Ideas on the page.
Yeah. Is there anything else we have to add here?
I'm not sure there's anything we can add other than belaboring the same points over and over again.
Oh, we're pretty good at that.
Yeah, well,
Doesn't mean we should do it.
like, there is a night haunt horse that curses our name from the number of times we've beat it, and I'm sure it's going to haunt our dreams for all eternity.
Oh, who cares? Oh, it's on the internet. It already haunts our dreams. It's there forever.
Yep.
Um,
But it's
yeah.
narrative, I feel like, is it's going to be the best way to keep you invested long term in the game and hobby, because it is itself a long format journey that allows you to explore parts of the game and parts of hobbies and parts of really any gaming system, not just the one that, I'm most attached to. But it really allows you to just basically take anything and transform it into a greater epic. And I hate using the term epic, but it's really applicable here.
It is. It's an epic.
You're creating your own mythology. You're creating your own story. And you're creating your own arcs, your own heroes, your own villains. And letting them play out in a way that allows you to have an emotional connection that you never thought you would have. It allows you to invest in a way you never thought you would, and gives you motivation and inspiration to let your creativity eat in a way that is both satisfying and lets you make something that can last. I mean, your memories of gaming in a narrative setting, the stories you tell, the models you collect, I've rarely ever given up a model that has a name. I've never felt the need to sell an army. And the models that I do give away are because the person I'm giving them to, it means something.
Yeah.
Like giving my father one of my Tau battle suits was a very cool moment in my life, because he's just like, this is awesome, this is really cool, and I'm just like, take it. And he's just like, are you sure, are you positive? I'm like, no, take it, you're gonna love it. So it's sitting on his desk right now in a little glass case.
Oh.
I gave my mother some of my first Bretonian errant knights. So my lost 5th edition Bretonia army lives on in a memory. She's got 6 of my errant knights in a little case on her desk too. I gave my cousins miniatures when we were playing D&D that came from some of my armies, so that they could start and have something really, really cool.
Yeah.
And for people who talk about, oh, I had to sell this whole army, and it's just like, I could never understand why somebody would give up something that they loved. And I realized it's because I have an attachment to each one of my forces and each one of my, like, I wouldn't have built it if I didn't have a narrative investment in it.
Yeah, and that's what I've learned. I'm the same way. That's why I'm selling my ogres, is because there's a new player that I know that loves the ogres. I'm like, well, I can give you, I'll give you exactly what I paid for it, and I got it at a bargain, and it's I'm actually probably selling it for less than what I paid for it, but it's because I don't have a narrative for them, and I don't hobby with them because of it. I'm shelving my Kings of War. I love Kings of War. I don't have a narrative for this army, so I can't do it. Also, just nobody plays around me, but it's definitely the narrative problem for sure, because if I loved the army enough, I'd be hobbying with it. And why do I keep looking at the Bretonian page on Warhammer Community? Because I have a story for that, I can safely say I've never given away a model to somebody as a gift, but I'd like to do that now that I think about it.
I mean, it definitely was hard. I'm not gonna lie.
Well, sure, nothing worth sacrificing is easy.
Yeah, but it was still the fact that I got to give a piece of myself to somebody else to inspire their own creativity. And in the case of my mom's, it's this is the woman who, no matter what I wanted to do, gave me the stuff to do it.
Yeah.
She loves anytime I post pictures, because she's also one of those ones that's where I post pictures of what I grade. She was an avid arts and crafter, and she was a very big believer in the fact that if we're gonna make something, we're gonna make something together. So I got dragged around to every one of her strange let's make a decorative basket arrangement class that she took at the Apple Blossom Harvest festivals in Winchester. I was intimately involved in some of the stranger things that she does, but as a result of it, like, I have a deep appreciation and passion for anything that's made with a creative spirit. And she recently got me too, where, you know, I showed a picture of like one of my Caradron Overlord ships, and she comes out with this made of Sculpey, free built dinosaur I made when I was like 8.
Oh.
And she says, you've been, because I was complaining about how bad I was with green stuff at the time, and she says, no, you've got this. You've been freehanding making stuff from scratch since time eternal, and I've got the proof. So, you know, it allows. Now, Dinosaur's name is Ed, in case anybody knows, and it is a character. So, Seraphon Army, maybe.
Let's do it. Yeah, I'll be your Maya cultural consultant on that one.
But I think I've got to finish my Bretonians, my Tau, and I've got a lot of Caradron that still need built as well. But, you know, in time perhaps. But it still kind of jumps back to that whole thing of do creative things. Yeah, absolutely. And when you do creative things, you have creativity and inspiration, and you feed off of that. And if you were to play the games just for the game itself, eventually in time you're going to get bored and frustrated with the fact that Games Workshop may not necessarily be the best game system and rules company out there, but the one thing that they have in spades and hands down are they have some of the best and most creative models.
Yeah,
so
they do.
By kind of investing yourself into more of that narrative side, into that creative side, I think you take some of the sting off the fact that, yeah, my army might suck rules-wise right now, but damn does it look good. And does it feel good? Like, I'm less concerned about, you know, I say this ironically in the fact that Caradron Overlords are actually supposedly, by all the rules people that I listen to, supposedly in a very good meta place right now, but I couldn't give two fucks. You know, I'm having fun delivering cookies.
Speaking of food deliveries, I'm going to be very distracted. Go. My girlfriend just barged in and brought me, oh good heavens, what is this? An English muffin, some cut strawberries, and then is this scrambled eggs with like not what's it called? There's ham in this, but there's also,
you got a scrapple?
What kind of leaf is this? Arugula. I'm just like, what? You just barged in and brought me this. I'm like, what? Oh, thank you. I love you, honey.
Honestly, I think we're at a good stopping point if you want to.
I think we're at a really good stopping point because I'm going to have to chow down now. And also kiss my partner profusely. But no, I think we're at a good stopping point. I mean, like, the only thing I could add here is just, all of this advice works for devising your army as well. So, you know, if you want to give a story to your force and, you know, why they are the way they are, well, hey, all this advice I think applies as well. I just realized I moved my microphone away, so that came through kind of quiet. And the other thing is, the last bit of advice I'll give is the way you build a D&D character will absolutely work for this. So if you think that these are drastically different things for your tabletop RPG of choice, it's not. I mean, down to even just reading the lore about each of the classes and deciding, oh, well, I want to build this thing. I mean, if you want to do that for Age of Sigmar, Humble Bundle right now, this just came across my desk, has a bundle for the Soulbound core book with the Champions of Order book, along with a bunch of the other supplemental stuff. Not the Chaos and Destruction books, but like the little one-off campaigns. And then they've got the same thing for Fantasy and then Wrath and Glory. So all the Cubicle 7 stuff. The base books and some of the extra campaign books. It's a base book, an expansion book, and then like some campaign books. All of those together for $25 on Humble Bundle. So if you're somebody who plays a lot of D&D and you're like, I don't know, you know, how to make a character for this type of thing, well, here's Age of Sigmar D&D. Here's Warhammer D&D. And it's cheap. So that works as well. But I think that's really the only things I have left to say. I think this is a really good stopping point. If you have any questions, of course, you can find us on Discord, or you can DM me on Twitter. Otherwise, definitely come hang out with us for these 2 events. I think there's still spots open for the Andor Supply. There's obviously, we'll post the event pack for that as well. We'll post the Animosity stuff. Now's a great time to be getting involved with Animosity. Gives you time to meet everybody and kind of get what we're about before the event starts. Definitely come on out and do that. But otherwise, I don't really have anything else to add. Do you, Kai?
I think I've said enough.
I think we have to. I think I have as well.
At least on this topic. Now, I will say that having gotten all of the character creation catharsis out, I'm still intimidated, but also kind of looking forward to talking about mistakes. Like all the mistakes we've made along the way.
That's going to be a hard one.
That's going to be a good... Hey, anything worth doing shouldn't be easy.
Sometimes I give good advice, I see. All right, well, I think we'll wrap it up here then. Thank you for listening, everybody. We're actually on the shorter side for once. We've come in at 2 hours. That's less than normal. I guess if we want to count normal by 2
episodes. I think
episodes.
our editor will be very, very happy with us on this one.
My wallet's going to be very happy on this one because he charges an hourly rate. So, all right. Take it easy, everybody. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed us, you should share this around and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And the last thing I'll say is I have a funny feeling that Josh from BBSBN might be coming on for a couple episodes. He's talked about wanting to do that. So if you've missed the BBSBN duo dynamic, don't worry, it's coming back. I can't say BBSBN is coming back yet. Josh's life is still pretty hectic. Extremely so. It's to the point that when I send him a text, I might get a response in 2 days. That's how busy he is. So, but we're talking about it. I know the Vampire team just came out, and I'm excited to talk about that. I'm excited to talk Blood Bowl again. So maybe we'll have to get some people on, and maybe one day I'll be able to finally trick Beaveld into coming onto the show.
I was going to say, of the 2 Bretonnian Knights, he is definitely the one that has the bigger investment in Blood Bowl.
For sure. We got to get you into Blood Bowl. We're getting you into Blood Bowl. I've decided.
I've just stepped into Warcry. So let me be my old man slow sloth self and digest that game system before we try another one.
All right, fine.
I'll also say the Blood Bowl elimination of my beloved Bretonnians has me feeling a certain kind of way.
You can still run them as Imperial Nobility. They're basically the same team. Just flavor them as your Bretonnians.
You speak heresy if you say that I need to be some sort of Empire bootlicker.
Look, I know they cheat at the joust, but it's really not a team you want to foul with. Actually, you probably do. Their linemen are pretty cheap, if I remember correctly. And they're squishy. So, but I mean, it's basically straight up the same rules.
I've actually thought about if I ever do Blood Bowl, I'm going to have an Ohio State themed orc army, and I'm definitely bringing out my linebackers. Which I can make all kinds of sports ball references, but my chief middle linebacker's got to be AJ Hawk.
Oh my god. Oh my god. I don't even know who that is, but
exactly. Nevertheless, if you can tempt me to that side, but I need to digest my Warcry first because I've got an Andor supply to raid.
As do I. After all, I have a certain war boss that's coming in hot, so gotta get this done. I think this is a good stopping point. We've said that 4 times.
Yep.
Time
to stop.
Yep. Thank you for listening, everybody. Take it easy and catch us next time for mistakes or not. Maybe mistakes in war stories if we have the time, because we definitely have plenty of those that we should share.
The missteps we have made on our way.
Yes. Catch you next time, everybody. Have a good rest of your day. Bye.
And always remember, charge everything.
Yeah. Why didn't we think of that advice yeah, when you're making your character, make sure they charge everything. Unbridled aggression is the mandatory. Okay. Take it easy, everybody. Have a good rest of your day.
Like a volcano. Another day to lose control. There's a fire in my bones. My sight gets blurry, pushing back the tears. Should take a leap of faith and face my fear. I blame it on the voices that